All right, welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to absolutely shatter the illusion that just collecting information is the same thing as actually learning it. I mean, so many of us are completely obsessive note takers, right? We keep journals for practically everything. We take detailed notes on the books we read, the classes we attend, maybe even our dreams. We just kind of assume that by getting the words out of the world and onto a page or a screen, we've successfully captured the knowledge. Done deal. But as we're going to unpack today, that assumption completely misses the actual biological mechanics of how human memory and comprehension work. To really wrap our heads around this, let's actually rewind about 2,000 years to a surprisingly relevant warning. Socrates, of all people, literally feared the invention of writing. His logic was that once an idea is physically written down somewhere, well, the reader no longer has to do the hard work of holding it in their own mind. He worried it wouldn't make people truly wiser, it would only make them seem wiser. They'd suddenly have access to all this vast knowledge, sure, but they wouldn't actually need to internally process or retain a single drop of it. And honestly, if you look at the state of technology today, the guy was incredibly prescient. He was basically predicting what we now call digital amnesia, or the Google effect. See, when we know that a piece of information is safely stored elsewhere, whether that's up in the cloud, in a beautiful Moleskine notebook, or just an app on your phone, our brains fundamentally shift how they handle it. We become so much more likely to remember exactly where the information is stored rather than the actual information itself. Just think about it for a second. There was a time when you probably knew the phone numbers of all your friends and family by heart. Now, we're lucky if we even know our own. It really begs the question, is all that brilliant insight you're dutifully saving in your notes destined to be completely forgotten, just like those phone numbers? So, here's the secret. Taking good notes isn't about hoarding data. The real magic happens during what psychologists call the encoding process. The biggest mistake we make is looking at a beautifully finished page of notes and thinking, yep, that is where the value lies. It's totally not. When you take good notes, you are forced to make active decisions about the information you're reading or hearing. You have to evaluate it, figure out what truly matters, and then translate it into your own phrasing. It is that exact mental effort, that cognitive friction, that actually reshapes the way you think and cements the memory in your brain. This brings us to this brilliant concept called generative learning. The idea is simple but super profound. We only understand things deeply when we actively do something with the information. Note-taking, when done right, puts your mind through a rigorous sequence. First, you receive a sea of information, but you can't treat it all equally. So next, you're forced into selection. You have to make the hard choices about what makes the cut and what gets left on the cutting room floor. Finally, you have to transform it. You figure out what it actually means, rebuild the concept inside your mind, and paraphrase it. It's literally a cognitive workout. And this exact need for a mental workout perfectly explains a really fascinating study from 2014 by Muller and Oppenheimer. They wanted to see exactly how the physical act of capturing notes changes what we actually learn. So they split students into two groups and had them watch lectures and take notes. One group typed away on a laptop, and the other group wrote them out old school, longhand with a pen and paper. The results were mind-blowing. The students taking handwritten notes generally remembered and understood the core concepts far, far better. Why? Well, it all comes down to speed. When you type, you can easily transcribe a lecture verbatim, almost at the speed of thought, which means you just end up mindlessly dictating. But writing by hand, that forces a physical speed limit on you. Because it's literally impossible to keep up, your brain goes into overdrive. You are forced to be selective, to condense, and to paraphrase on the fly. You do way more mental processing simply because you can't go as fast. But hey, here's the good news if you absolutely love your tech. There is nothing inherently magical about paper and ink. The magic is in the pacing. If you use a laptop or an iPad, you can get the exact same benefits by artificially introducing that friction yourself. You just have to force yourself to pause, stop typing verbatim, and take the time to deliberately organize and process the information. You basically have to simulate the physical constraints of handwriting. Which brings us to a massive, massive psychological trap when we go back to review our notes. You open up your beautifully organized digital document, you read over the text you've captured, and you get this overwhelming sense of satisfaction, right? You think, yes, I know this, I've got this. But as Socrates warned us, having access to the information is dangerous, because familiarity is not the same thing as actual knowledge. Psychologists actually call that warm, fuzzy feeling the sense of fluency. It is a completely deceptive illusion of competence that happens when your eyes easily glide over words and the text just makes sense in the moment. You naturally want that feeling, but it's a trap because it doesn't guarantee you can actually explain the concept 5 minutes from now. The absolute best way to shatter that illusion and test your actual comprehension is their active summarizing. If you can explain it out loud in your own words, you truly know it. If you stumble and fail, the illusion vanishes, and you realize you've got a bit more work to do. And boy, do we try to beat this with some incredibly complex modern tools. We build these massive, searchable databases and powerful apps like Notion and Obsidian. I mean, we live in a golden age where capturing notes is completely frictionless. You can export endless Kindle highlights in a single click, or even use an AI app to listen to an entire lecture and spit out a beautifully formatted summary for you. It looks incredibly impressive. You end up with this gargantuan, neatly organized database of knowledge without spending a single second actually thinking about the ideas. But here's the ultimate catch. If a tool bypasses your own mental effort to select and transform the ideas, you are totally robbing yourself of the actual value of note-taking. It's perfectly fine to collect quotes or scrape articles, but only if you actively wrestle with that material later. Usually, though, we see that beautifully formatted AI summary, we feel a quick rush of dopamine, and we think the work is done. If the tool decided what to highlight and how to summarize the core concepts, then you skipped the encoding process entirely. You essentially outsourced your learning to a machine. Your database might be brilliant, but your brain remains completely unchanged. So it all boils down to this. Passive collection relies entirely on the app. It skips the cognitive friction of encoding and leaves you with nothing but the illusion of knowledge, that tricky sense of fluency. On the flip side, a simple, straightforward summarizing habit puts you firmly in the driver's seat. It acts as the ultimate lie detector test for your brain, forcing you to deeply understand the ideas and translate them into your own words. It might not be as flashy as a crazy digital database, but for building real, lasting intelligence over the long haul, simple, active mental effort is going to win every single time. To wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a bit of a challenge for your own digital habits. Socrates really was right to be worried all those years ago. Notes can absolutely change what we remember, but only if we actively encode them. So the next time you're reading a fascinating article or sitting in a lecture and you're reached to copy and paste a block of text into your Notes app, just pause for a second. Ask yourself, am I saving this note to help my brain remember it? Or am I just saving it so my brain never has to think about it again?